Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Marco Dure Show. It is Monday, December 1st, 2025. Thank you for tuning in today's show to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Please don't forget to follow the show wherever you might get your podcast. It's available on all streaming apps. And please share with others so that we can make thinking great again in America today. Hope everyone's ready for the best hour radio has to offer, uncensored and ready to go. Let's start December off. And let's start this week off the right way. Let's get down to brass tacks with my first line of business here today. An article here from Fox News discussing some of the scummiest elements of our society. No, I'm not talking about the Biden administration, of course, and his cabinet. But I am talking about Ramanuala Lakanwal and the latest Nobel Peace Prize nominee from also war-torn Afghanistan, Mohammed Dawood Alakozi. What is going on in America today, folks? What is happening in our country? It's almost unbelievable, the things that we continue to see here. And the story that's unfolding here is very shocking, I have to tell you. But let's start off with some disturbing information. I touched upon this on Friday's show. Perhaps some of you heard it, perhaps some of you didn't. But we've got some more disturbing information, and of course, questions that need to be answered about this Lakanwal, and things that have come up with this shooting that took place last Wednesday evening in our nation's capital. And again, it claimed the life of National Guardswoman Sarah Beckstrom, only 20 years old of West Virginia, and also critically injuring Andrew Wolf, 24, also of West Virginia. He still today remains in critical condition. The shooting of our federal agents comes after constant rhetoric that encourages violence, using words like authoritarianism, invasion, militarization. You know these words. You know the players in the game. You've got little Jamie Raskin, Raskin the reject is what I call him, using, well, this is just textbook authoritarian maneuver. And we don't think this has any result in how people think about our federal agents being in our cities. Then you've got Governor J.B. Pritzker the pig calling it an invasion, an attack on the American people. And again, warned against the militarization of America, and especially American cities. Notice he never says a damn thing about gang violence or attacks on citizens in his own city in this own manner. And of course, then we have newly elected CIA Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, suggesting that tensions could lead to National Guardsmen potentially opening fire on Americans. So they're stoking the flames of this. She was also part of that video where the six Democrats, I should say, coming out and telling the military to, question everything, obey orders that are unlawful. Again, they've already been taught this. Why do our military need to hear from members of Congress saying this, of which they could never provide any type of example? Did it make any bit of sense to anyone listening to that? Then again, they go on the mainstream news. They can't tell us a damn thing of where Trump is doing anything illegal, of where any of our National Guardsmen are opening fire or attacking American citizens. Does anyone have any proof of this? Well, I agree with the sentiment. They shouldn't follow unlawful commands. I understand that. Why do they keep stoking this fear among our military, though? That's the big question I have for you. But again, people hear these things. People react to these things. They get worried about these things. They believe these things. But is any of it actually true? Well, which brings me to my next point. Operation Allies Welcome under the great Biden regime. This is how Ramanual Lakanwal entered the United States after the botched withdrawal, leaving on a U.S. C-17 transport aircraft. No vetting, no checks, and of course, proven to be another blunder for the Biden-Harris team, of course. But who is this Lakanwal? And again, why is he brought to America? Why do we usher in roughly 100,000, at least, Afghans to America? Again, unchecked, unfettered, this unbridled immigration into the United States. Well, I'm told by my sources that he was recruited actually by the CIA when he was just 14 years old, if you can believe that. And again, he worked them for 11 years, leaving the country in 2021. And again, when he came here to the United States. So, roughly 11 years he's working with the CIA. He was in a unit called Zero Unit, a special activities division that focused on, get this, counterterrorism, targeting the Taliban, particularly the leaders, conducting a high-risk night operations in Kandahar, tasks such as killing or capturing Taliban commanders, breaching homes, I'm sure to extract or kill people, gathering intelligence, detaining suspects, and securing compounds. Now, these are all considered dangerous, as you can imagine, and of course frequently involved a close-quarter combat. Does this sound like the proper environment for a 14-year-old to you? Anyone that's listening? Would anyone listening put their middle schooler in this position? No, of course you wouldn't, unless of course you're insane. But the CIA had no problem recruiting a 14-year-old. Was he the only one, by the way? Are there other teenagers, young teenagers, being put in these drastic, violent situations? It's disgraceful. Who recruited him, by the way? How come we don't know about who recruited him, who were his contacts in the United States? What's going on here with this? And why would our CIA recruit teenagers for this? It's unbelievable. It really is. So let's fast forward. We go into 2021, when Biden brilliantly pulled out of Afghanistan, right? Our soon-to-be killer was among some of these 100,000 plus people that left Afghanistan. And let's never forget about the 13 brave Marines that were killed at the Kabul airport, another blunder and national disgrace for the Biden administration. But Lacanwall gets a trip to America paid for by you, the American taxpayer, under Operation Allies Welcome. Now, he's said to have lived in Bellingham, Washington after arriving. This is a small city in northern Washington near the Canadian border. Again, mostly white people, but it is a Democrat majority city. Roughly, I think it was 60 plus-ish, just over 60% of the city votes Democratic. It's a city of just under 100,000 people. Mostly white people, by the way. That's going to be important for what I talk about in just a moment. So, with his newly granted asylum, Lacanwall is now considered a newly lawful immigrant of the United States. And again, I'm waiting for Kash Patel, who assured us that he was going to explain all this to us. Again, where did he get this firearm from? Now, it is important to understand, of course, that in order to purchase a firearm legally in the United States, you would have to go through a background check by the FBI. Did this happen? How did he get this firearm? Did someone else own the firearm that was used to kill a National Guardsman? Again, was he in any way still working with the CIA? How did he get to D.C.? I mean, again, but imagine this. For the last 8 months, he's gotten a firearm. In that time frame window, he received asylum, I believe, in April. And now he's going to travel from Washington State to D.C. It's not a short journey. He couldn't have done it by plane, so he had to have actively driven across the United States to target 2 National Guards members and ends up killing one of them. Again, it's an odd scenario. It's a very odd thing. Now, Christy Noem came out in Bloomberg. Let me read this part to you. She came out saying that the authorities believe that the man suspected of fatally shooting a National Guardsman and wounding another, she says that we believe that he was radicalized since he's been in the country. We do believe that it was through connections in his home community and state. We're going to continue to talk to these people and to be interacted with, who were his family members. So far, we've had some participation. Let's stop for a second. I just told you roughly 76% of the city is white. I think another 10-ish% is of Latin origin. I think 2% black, maybe 1% Asian. So it's a very small Muslim population. It's not like he went to, Dearborn where roughly half of the population is Somali and Muslim, or Arabic, rather. So he's in a very white neighborhood, I would have to argue with you. 3 out of 4 people roughly are white. So where's the radicalization coming from? Are there radical elements in Bellingham, Washington? I've never heard of this. It's not like he's also in Portland, where Antifa is very alive and well. So again, very odd situations that he's radicalized in the United States, not in Afghanistan, where he's seeing lots of violence, where there's lots of war going on. And again, we have to understand, too, seeing this type of thing as a child and being active in this and working with troops to do all these tasks that he was given, it begs the question, did this radicalize him? Did what he do in Afghanistan radicalize him, where he's seeing his fellow Afghans getting killed and slaughtered and what's happening as a result of that? For 11 years, by the way. So from age 14 to 25, he's seeing all this violence, when the brain is not fully developed yet. Obviously, he's going to be wired a little bit different than you and I, who haven't seen stuff like this. Just thought I'd bring that up. But again, odd scenario. So what were the changes for Lacanwall that he would do this? Shell shock from the war in Afghanistan? Maybe. Did he listen to the ignoramuses, that I listed above about America being under attack, and he's got to defend his new nation? Again, we need to know how he got to D.C. How did he come in possession of this firearm that was used, and did he still have contacts with the CIA? Can you figure that out for us, Mr. Patel? Can someone find this out, how this was able to happen here in the United States? It begs the question, of course. But that brings us to our other part of this. And there's 2 very, very important parts of this. Number 1, Dan Crenshaw, by the way, I want to go over this. I found this out this morning. Actually wrote to the Biden administration urging Tony Dinkin and other officials to expedite the importation of Afghan nationals following the blunder that was the Biden Afghan withdrawal. And if you don't believe me, you could go online and look at it. I'm looking at it right here. Letter dated from June 25th, 2021. Yep. And here he says, for this reason, we request that you immediately begin the process of reviewing the Special Immigrant Visa Program to ensure that it has the necessary resources to operate effectively. Oh. And it goes on to say, immediately processing all pending applications should be a top priority for the Department of Homeland Security. In addition to processing, we learned that there is need to provide financial assistance to the SIV recipients. Oh, so of course we have to pay for these people. Wonderful. It's brilliant, folks, brilliant. We pay for our own demise. Now, again, he wrote this to Tony Dinkin and Mayorkas. Good old Mayorkas. Never saw a blunder he couldn't handle. Okay, so there you go. So now we have Republicans actively bringing in these people unvetted to the United States. And by the way, just so we're all clear, this Lacanwall was actually given asylum in April of this year by the Trump Department of Homeland Security. So again, Kristi Noem has to answer this, too. Did they vet this person? Why was he given asylum? Should this person have been able to purchase a firearm? Now, according to the law, a legal immigrant in the United States is able to do so with the proper documentation and, of course, passing all of the requirements for the background check. But here you have a CIA asset that's involved in all these types of violent aspects of what happened in Afghanistan, and we're going to give him a gun now. Was he given a psych evaluation? I mean, these are all things that need to be answered over time. Do I think we'll get these answers? Do we ever? Of course not. Of course not. Why would we get these answers? So that brings us to number 2 now. Good old number 2. Here we go. This is in Fox News over the weekend. It says, Afghan national admitted via Operation Allies Welcome, charged with making terrorist threats, says the DHS. Who is this guy? Well, I want everyone to meet Mohammed Dawood Alakozi, being now charged at the state level with making a terrorist threat. He was indicted for suggesting that he would be making a bomb with an intent to target the area of Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah, posting the video of himself on TikTok actually indicating that he was building this bomb. This is who we're bringing into the country right now. And again, I think you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with all this. We talked earlier in the show about how the sleeper cells in the United States, these people that we ushered in either through the southern border or through some of these programs like Operation Allies Welcome, are being brought in the United States. Again, unvetted, not checked, no real reason to bring these people in. And yet we're continuing to do this to ourselves, folks. Then we're seeing violence like this breaking out in our cities. It says here on September 7th, 2022, Lacosi was admitted to the U.S. as a lawful permanent resident. Yet he's building bombs to target metropolitan areas in the United States. ICE has since lodged a detainer on Lacosi following his arrest. Is he going to get deported or what? We cannot have people like this. Now, I'm happy to see that Trump is looking into a lot of this and suggesting that, hey, people like this, people that have given this, asylum in the United States, they're eligible to be kicked out of the country. How much longer can we sustain this, folks? And again, we're talking about American lives here, at risk. How much longer can we accept this level of violence in our country, where our agents are being actively targeted by foreign nationals? And again, why are we bringing these people into the United States that don't share our values, that do not want to assimilate any bit at all? And we're told this is okay. We're told this is fine. But it brings in one more point before I move on to our next topic today. This is important. We see this level of violence in the country continue to escalate, largely in our major cities. Again, I watched this morning. I'm watching ICE trying to leave one of their facilities, I believe in Chicago. Woman trying to block it. There's protesters outside, and they removed this woman. They threw her right out of the way. How much longer are we going to put up with this nonsense in this country? We have some of the stupidest elements of people actively trying to get in the way of federal agents performing the tasks that they are required to and are legally able to do. How much longer are we going to accept this? That's the big question here. But now I saw this. Again, it makes sense, folks. AG Pam Bunny says, we are bringing in our National Guard into every city we possibly can in the wake of CIA-linked Afghan shooter in D.C. How about you deport these people? How about you deport the people in the streets of Dearborn saying, Allah Akbar? How about you do that? How about you get rid of the 50 million illegal aliens in this country? How about you start there? How about the 55 million, yes, I'm saying million, expired visa holders that are still in this country? Why don't you start there and then see if it's necessary to do that? Just illegally bring in the National Guard into every single city in the country? Now, folks, there are parameters for doing this, by the way. Obviously, D.C. is different. It's a federal city. It does not require a governor or any type of insurrection or what have you to allow that. But if you're going to bring in the National Guard or the military into American cities, first of all, there has to be a reason for it. Either there's a rebellion or an insurrection ongoing to take down the existing government. That's one of the reasons. And again, the governor of that state has to approve of that. The president can't just come in and say, you know what, I'm going to bring in National Guardsmen in every single city in the United States, and we're going to have law and order now. That is simply not how the Constitution was set up. You cannot just simply use the National Guard to bring crime down. Now, of course, we're seeing success with that in D.C., minus, of course, the violence we saw break out last Wednesday. But that's, again, there are constitutional provisions of which allow certain things and they don't allow certain things. Now, if there's upheaval, like, for example, what we saw in the George Floyd riots, right, that took place in the summer of 2021, and you see this upheaval, you see this political violence, you see this, damage to property, to human life, unrest in the streets, then that is a reason for that. But simply having crime in a city is not a reason to just bring in the National Guard. Was this the plan all along? I don't know. I'm not sure. That's why we need to figure out who the hell Canwall has been speaking to. Has he still been speaking to his superiors in the United States? Was he told to go do this? Who gave him the gun? What did he do in Afghanistan? We should know all about this guy. Yet we don't know really a damn thing. But only time will tell. But again, are they using this as a pretext to, again, usher in the National Guard into every single city in America? Unconstitutionally? Again, I told you before, it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat to me. You have to follow the Constitution. And Pam Bondi, of all people, she's a lawyer. She's the leading law enforcement officer of the country. She should know this. If I know this, she knows this. Again, I'm just going to tell it to you how it is. If I know that's the law, she knows that's the law. Every single city we possibly can. Well, you're certainly not going to bring it to California or Illinois or Massachusetts or New York. Those governors aren't going to allow that. It's not going to happen in Michigan. Because the Democrats aren't going to play ball with this. They're just not. They're not going to support that. They also don't support their own citizens, so why should we be shocked about that? We have local law enforcement for a reason. Yes, if there are federal crimes, and of course the FBI gets involved. Of course there's federal crimes for all these things. But you can't just bring in the National Guard just because you want to. Every time we walk down the street, we see armed federal agents in the streets now? I mean, is that where we're becoming as a nation? Something to think about, folks. And I don't know. Do you want that? I don't want that. Again, if there's reason for it, if there's civil unrest in the streets, if there's a mob going out and attacking everything in sight, destroying things, burning things down, yes, that's called for that. But we're not seeing that. We are seeing upticks of crime. I'm not denying that in some of these cities. I'm not even saying you can't even guard your ICE facilities. You should be able to do that, and you should do that. But again, federal property and just simply having federal troops in the streets actively just standing there monitoring you is a totally different thing. Again, I don't think Americans want that by and large. Just thought I'd share that with you. Again, it's something to think about, of course. And again, as time goes on, are we going to see more of this? God only knows. You got to follow the Constitution, folks. That's just the way it is, of course. One thing the Trump administration's doing that, again, I'm happy for, again, this should be happening, of course, is that, again, this is in Breitbart, it says federal and state authorities arrested nearly 250 foreign commercial truck drivers in the month of November alone, warning that cartel operatives and foreign nationals alike are exploiting America's commercial truck driving licensing system to infiltrate freight corridors and endanger national security. Well, again, they're absolutely right about this. We've seen, obviously, people getting their CDLs in states like California, of course. We see what that does on our streets, of course. It creates an unsafe environment, especially when you can't even read the street signs or speak the language. How are you going to decipher what's going on? If there's a problem, how are you going to call up for help or assistance? You can't read the street signs, yet you're given a commercial driver's license. You shouldn't even have a driver's license. But again, this is what we're seeing. Again, this is being pushed in states like where I lived in California. But it has led to the apprehension of nearly 250 drivers in Arizona, Indiana, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Kansas, even New York and California alike. Again, what a big blunder for Gavin Newsom. The federally led operation followed orders from President Trump and, of course, the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to remove the often dangerous drivers from American highways. Many of them were to be found here illegally in the United States. So again, this begs the question, how are they getting these IDs? How are they getting these IDs? I couldn't go into the DMV in California and say, give me a driver's license. I mean, they throw me right out. But if you're here illegally, they issue you one. We're seeing these driver's licenses now with no names on them. Yet they're being issued to people. We can't even verify who these people are. They have no documentation. They're supposed to be here in this country. But they're given a driver's license? And then you're told you have to go get a real ID now, right? Real ID. Oh, of course. Does it make any sense to you, folks? So what they're telling you is the document you have now, if it's not a real ID, is a fraudulent document. Might not verify who you are. But again, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this encroachment again They want to start putting chips in these things. Now, there aren't chips now in the real IDs, of course. But there are chips in your passport now. Isn't that great? Oh, of course. Wonderful. But again, they're moving you in that direction is what I'm trying to tell you. Yet for some reason, we're still allowing these people into the country and allowing these individual states to issue these driver's license, which means, of course, they can go to other states and do these things as well. Well, they bring their California driver's license. They say, hey, I'm living at X, Y, and Z address. They get a new ID in Florida or in Texas or wherever, Indiana. It doesn't matter where it is. So the system is screwed up beyond all belief, of course. And again, the crackdown, part of President Trump's broader deportation agenda, which, again, he needs to get on with. He's only deported about 300,000 people. And again, this aims to purge up to 200,000 foreign commercial driver's license holders in the trucking industry alone. God knows about the million people that got it, I believe, in California in 2015, under the great Kamala Harris, under the great Jerry Brown in California, issuing indefinitely to illegal aliens. It just makes the whole system a mockery, folks. So don't tell me that illegals can't vote. Don't tell me illegals can't do this and that. They're beating the system because the Democrats are letting them do this. And whoever's doing that should be held accountable. I would think you would agree with that. But now we have Homeland Security leaders now arguing that cartel networks and hostile actors could weaponize heavy trucks or use them to smuggle contraband across critical freight corridors. Of course they would. Why would they? You don't think they do that already? Now it's just easier for them. Again, it's just remarkable that we continue to see these things. But we're seeing this across the nation. These people are getting figured out. And again, the states that are cooperating indefinitely, like in Oklahoma with Governor Kevin Stitt, who was a really standout governor. I mean, he does great things in that state. I think one time they were doing these checks, and they found a lot of people just on one highway, and they deported them. That's how we work together. That's how we save America. That's the only way you can do it, folks. Other than that, you are screwing things up. So maybe something positive in that aspect coming out with, again, getting more of these deportations. Maybe it might be easier to locate some of these people if some of these states play ball with the federal government and say, hey, this person, these million or so people we gave IDs to in 2015, 2016. Yeah, here they are. Okay, now you might be able to figure out who they are. Then you can, through due process, figure out who these people are, identify them, and again, you could deport them. They should already be doing this. One article that I saw just over the weekend, too, is very intriguing to me. It might be to you as well. This is an NBC News. It says here that the FDA now claims COVID shots killed 10 children and vows new vaccine rules. I mean, this is remarkable. They're actually now starting to admit this. But now we have the director of the Food and Drug Administration's vaccine division telling agency staff in a memo that an internal review found at least 10 children died because of or after receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. I told you this. I mean, I've been telling you this for so long that, again, these shots are not what they say they are. They're not safe and effective. That they failed even the premise of any type of standardized testing for safety. I mean, you had roughly 2 months of safety testing before these were ushered out. None of the animals survived the safety testing, yet for some reason the FDA gave it emergency use authorization. It doesn't make any sense, folks. It really doesn't. But here we go. It says here a 3,000-word memo obtained by NBC News, written by Dr. Vinay Prasad, the director of the FDA's Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. He went on to claim that the agency has now determined that no fewer than 10 of 96 child deaths reported to the VAERS system, that'd be the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, between 2021 and 2024 were related to the COVID vaccination. He said the true numbers could be much higher, accusing the agency of ignoring these safety concerns for years. Haven't I been telling you this? I've been telling you this for months now. Roughly 2.6 million now VAERS reports just related to the COVID-19 shot. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the VAERS system, it's a system for obviously reporting these adverse effects as a result of a vaccination. Makes sense. That's what it's called. But here's the thing. They're trying to push back now. The experts, so-called, are pushing back, who are reviewing these memos, saying that it's now misusing information from VAERS. They're saying, well, it's an unverified reporting system. It allows anyone, including doctors, patients, caregivers, to submit any entry about these adverse events they believe are linked to these COVID vaccines, or any vaccine for that matter. The system's own website warned that the submissions can contain inaccurate, incomplete, or biased information. Now, I want to stop for a second here. Reading this to you, you might say, well, okay, it's a fraudulent system. It doesn't really mean anything. It means the shots are fine. Let's hold on for a second. In order to submit anything on the VAERS website, documentation, it is a legally binding document. So I can't go in there and say, Marco Dre says, blah, 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 I took the COVID shot and, I have this ailment now. It has to be verified, and it is a legal document. So let's all be clear on this. Now, it doesn't necessarily indicate correlation, of course. But it is saying, for example, let's say you were fine before you took this shot, then all of a sudden you have myocarditis, or you have pericarditis, or you just suffered a massive stroke. All of a sudden, and you were in fairly decent health prior to this. Or let's say you're 20 years old, all of a sudden you have a stroke. I mean, that's not common. I think we all can agree on that. So does it necessarily mean all 2.6 million cases are a direct link to the shot? Doesn't necessarily mean that. But again, if you are fine prior to taking the shot, you have no health ailments, you have no conditions, no comorbidities at all, and all of a sudden, you've got myocarditis, you got pericarditis, you have a stroke, you've had blood clots now, you've had Bell's palsy, you have facial paralysis, you had a heart attack. I mean, again, we're seeing young athletes on soccer fields in Europe. We saw it here in the United States too, by the way. On the field, passing out and dying of a heart attack. 20 years old, 22. I just want to remind everybody that, again, a soccer player is in pretty good cardiovascular shape, especially when you're in your 20s. I mean, you are very gifted athletically to having to do that running up and down a field. We saw it here in the United States. People standing up, and then 1 second they're falling down. Dying, heart attack, stroke, this and that. We've seen it on our news. Oh, so-and-so got the shot, they're fine. Then they pass out right in front of you. Just falling down right. You can go look at the compilation. I don't have to share it to you. It's out there. You can go see that for yourself. We saw that when the shot was being first implemented. They gave it to that one woman. I don't know who her name is. I'm not sure what website it was on or what station. She got the shot that she's standing up, but a couple minutes later, she passes right out. Now, folks, I mean, again, correlation. I think the correlation is pretty high that was related to what they just injected inside this woman. Again, I'm not trying to give you any medical advice. I'm not telling you what to do. You can make your own decisions. But you need to look into this. This is something very, very important. It's obviously something you should know what's in these shots. That's all I'm saying to you. You should be able to question everything. And you need to look at the pros and cons of this. Do I want this to be injected into myself or my children? If so, why? Is the risk of getting the shot better than changing my diet, exercising, making sure I have high levels of vitamin C and vitamin D3? Those are all valid questions. But the idea, though, that the experts, so-called, are coming out and saying, the VAERS should just be simply ignored. I read to you last week. The VAERS system is one of the ways in which the FDA, which, again, looks at how these vaccines are safely being monitored in the United States, and they actually make decisions based off that. But I just told you, as of, the outlining of these shots when they come out, when they're first produced, there's really no actual safety testing, even when they change the formulas in these vaccines. And they haven't done this for quite some time. Again, I implore all of you, go look it up. Go say, when was the last time the hepatitis B vaccine for an infant was safely tested? And it'll give you the whole rigmarole. They'll say, well, right at the, this initial safety testing showed this was safe and effective. It was created in 1981. And say, okay, when's the last time it was updated and what are the results of these tests? You won't find a thing about it. But they will tell you, hey, we look at the VAERS information to make safe decisions for your children, to determine if it's safe. Okay. Does anyone else buy this? I don't. And the reason I don't buy it is because, again, is the Childhood Vaccine Immunity Act of 1986 that Reagan signed. Awful bill. And I love Reagan. But it was an awful bill. It allowed these vaccine manufacturers, these big pharmaceutical companies, to produce vaccines en masse, and they're not legally held by any standard. They cannot be sued if their product injures you. So are we to say, hey, you're given this carte blanche immunity. If you produce poison, toxic, things that don't work, things that hurt people, things that disable people, you're not held responsible. So again, what is their ploy? What is their advantage to give you something that actually works even? There really isn't any, folks. But it is a multi-billion-dollar corporations that do this, of course, and they make a hell of a lot of money. Yep, so now what we have here as a result of all this, the memos now using highly ideological language, of course, reportedly characterizing the COVID vaccine requirements for schools and, of course, employees as coercive, which, again, they were, calling past agencies' decisions dishonest, which, again, they were, and arguing that the vaccine regulation may have harmed more children than it saved. That's a valid point. At one point, Prashad instructs staff who disagreed with him to resign. Well, I mean, we either have to know for sure, look at the safety testing, know what's in these vaccines. Again, right when people started taking them, we had no information. If you asked to see the slips inside of these shots, they would just pull out this long bit of paper, right? They unfold it all, and there's nothing on it. So you have no idea what's in these shots. Would you put something inside your body, you have no idea what's inside of it? Oh, because Anthony Fauci told you it's safe and effective? He also told you it was 95% effective in preventing any type of transmission of the COVID illness. The virus itself. Well, that changed quickly. Well, no, it's 90. Then it was 80. Then it was 50. Then it was, it stops any type of symptoms from getting worse. Well, wait a minute. That's not a vaccine then. Even Rochelle Walensky came out. Said the same thing. So again, you could still get the virus. You're going to get it if you come in contact with it. It's not going to stop any type of transmission whatsoever. Then, folks, that's not a vaccine. That's something else. I'm just being honest with you. And again, how do you know it's going to cause any decline in symptoms? How do you know it's not going to cause the symptoms? You have no idea. You don't have proper safety. That's why vaccines take roughly 10 years to complete. They go through short-term testing. They test the vaccine. They go through long-term testing. What are the effects 10 years down the road after taking these shots? Again, folks, the numbers speak for themselves. I gave this to you before. I'll read it to you again. So I want you all to have the information so you can make decisions on your own. Myocarditis, as a result of taking the COVID shots, in that population is up 2,800%. Cancers, turbo cancers, and again, very different kinds of cancers, anywhere from 300 to 900%. Infertility of both sexes, up 500%. Miscarriages, 300%. Neurological disorders and demyelinating disorders as well, up 1,000%. Multiple sclerosis, up 600%. Guillain-Barré syndrome, up 5%. Pulmonary embolisms, up 400%. And HIV, up 500%. And again, that's because the shot makes your body become a host. Your body produces the spike proteins. It's mRNA technology. So now your body is actually producing these spike proteins and you don't think you're going to get sick? You don't think it's going to weaken your immune system? Again, folks, I can't tell you to believe me. I can only tell you and encourage you to go do your own research on this, if you don't. But I've done this research on this since this came out. I've listened to independent doctors, even doctors that have lost their licensing. You say, well, how could you do that? How could you listen to a doctor that's losing their license? Because these people are coming out and telling you specific truths about this. That's why they're losing their licensing. I remember these doctors in Bakersfield, California were coming out saying, wait a minute, there's no safety testing in this. We can't provide this to our patients. And what happened to them? They lost their license because they didn't play ball. And again, I applaud people for that. I applaud people for that because, again, they're trying to come out and tell you the truths. Again, believe me, don't believe me, but hey, do your own research. That's all I'm going to tell you to do. And you can look at this article on NBC News for more information about it. But I'll leave you with this. It says here a 2023 analysis in the JAMA Pediatrics reviewed 17 studies covering more than 10 million children ages 5 to 11 who got Pfizer's or Moderna's COVID shots. It says here that vaccinated kids had a lower risk of infection and hospitalization compared to those that weren't. Okay, but then a 2024 study in Nature Communications also found no increased risk of serious adverse events in young children after the COVID vaccine. It did identify a small increase of myocarditis in teen boys after the first 2 days. Okay. So again, this is just what's being reported. Again, the studies, we don't know anything about these studies. We don't know how many people were vaccinated, how many were not vaccinated. But here's the thing. You have to know, anytime you're doing a study like this, you have to do a double-blind case study. You have to know exactly the situation in which these people were put in. That's how it works. So just having a study, and again, the sample size is very big in the 2023 one, 10 million children who got Pfizer or Moderna's COVID shots. Okay. So I say, all right, I'll believe this. So you're saying that even though the Fauci came out and said that it doesn't stop the transmission, somehow these kids didn't get the shot. Okay. What were their vitamin levels? Were they taking vitamins? Were they not taking vitamins? Were the kids that got the illness actually testing positive for COVID? Because we know that what do they call those? The polychain reactor tests, the PCR tests, were not any. First of all, let's go over that too. That's important. Then I think of it. The PCR tests that you took possibly, and I didn't take them too because I was teaching at the time. If you run it through enough cycles, right? If they take your, sample from your nasal cavity and they test it, if they run it through enough cycles, they will find viral DNA and it'll give you a positive. Now, it'll be a false positive, but it'll be positive. So that's why you had people saying, hey, you have COVID, and, you're going, what? I'm not sick. I'm not sick at all. It could be a piece of DNA floating that's been there for decades. We say, well, hey, you got COVID. It's showing up. If they run it through enough cycles, that is. So again, the PCR test, and by the way, the person that created it even came out and said, this is not used for anything outside of lab use to identify a virus. It can't pinpoint what virus you have. And I just want to say to you, the number of flu cases in the year of, I think it was 2020 or 2021, I think shot down to like a couple thousand. It was like 2,000 or 3,000 flu shots. And there was millions of COVID illnesses those years. Interesting, huh? But I'll leave you with this. It says here, rare but serious side effects. Again, this is coming from the CDC, the Center for Disease Creation and Production. Okay, what does it say? It says, severe allergic reaction only occurs in about 5 cases per million doses. Okay, whatever. Myocarditis and pericarditis. So you can get this. And again, by the way, they had to publish this relatively quickly, right after the shot came out. Because again, there was only about 2 months of safety testing. Rare inflammation of the heart or surrounding tissue, seen mostly in adolescent and young males, typically within a week of the second mRNA dose. Why would that happen? Well, because again, all these spike proteins are going to the cardiac muscle and they're damaging the tissue. That's why you're seeing the inflammation of the 2 tissues. Most cases respond well to rest and medication, well, except for the people on soccer fields that were passing out and dying, of course. Guillain-Barré syndrome, rare nerve disorder. I just talked to you about that. Cases were up significantly. mainly associated with the J&J vaccine. No longer used in the United States. So we even pulled a vaccine. This thrombosis, rare blood clotting, also discontinued because of the J&J vaccine. So the idea that, these are just rare circumstances, when I just read to you the statistics about this, is again, to me, is very interesting. Of course, we can have skewed information. Of course, the statistics don't always indicate what's going on, because we don't know who's actually sick with COVID, and again, who has viral DNA just showing up in a PCR test, because maybe they ran the unvaccinated kids' PCR test 40 cycles, where they ran the vaccinated kids maybe 10 times. We don't know. We don't know this information. So it's something to think about. Again, folks, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't believe in that. I just want to give you the information I have because I want you to be informed. So take that as you will. Do with it as you will. But again, always question things. Do your own research. Know what you're putting in your bodies and what you're putting in your spouses and your children's bodies, folks. Please. Don't just take someone's word for it. Don't just take my word for it. I want you to go out and do your own research. But this is what I found in the research I've been doing on this, and I've been doing it for quite some time. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying I'm Mr. Know-It-All. But what I am saying is, you don't know what's in these shots. So please, do your own research. All right, moving on. AP News has an article I found very interesting, too. It says here, Northwestern to pay $75 million in deal with the Trump administration to restore federal funding. This is so ridiculous. I shake my head when I read these things. Northwestern University has agreed to pay $75 million to the U.S. government in a deal with the Trump administration to end a series of investigations and restore hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding. So we're going to pay them $75 million so we can get hundreds of millions back to the college. Okay, that makes sense. The Trump administration had cut off roughly $790 million in grants in a standoff that contributed to the university's layoffs and, of course, the resignation in September of Northwestern President Michael Schill. Maybe he's a shill, who knows? And the administration argued that the school had not done enough to fight anti-Semitism. Okay. That's interesting. So under the now new agreements announced on Friday, Northwestern will make the payment to the U.S. Treasury over the next 3 years. Among other commitments, it also required the university to revoke the so-called Deering Meadow Agreement, which was signed in April of 2024 in exchange for pro-Palestinian protesters ending their tent encampments on campus. During the negotiations, interim university president Harry B.M. said Northwestern refused to cede control over hiring, admissions, or its curriculum, stating that he would never have signed this agreement without provisions ensuring that is the case. So what is really going on here? This is what I want to know. What is really going on here? Is it the protest on the campus that the Trump administration doesn't like? Is it bringing attention to what's happening in the Middle East? Are there students being attacked on the Northwestern campus? Now again, I'm someone who does not want to see violence at all, for any reason whatsoever. That's just who I am. But is it the free speech on these campuses, on these Ivy League campuses? What's going on here? That's what we need to ask ourselves. And the agreement also calls for Northwestern to continue compliance with the federal anti-discrimination laws. Well, they should already have been doing that, yes? And it says here, develop training materials to socialize international students with the norms of a campus dedicated to open debate. Now let's stop for a second. Open debate? Well, okay, so then you don't want protests on your campus. Now, again, if people are being unruly, if they're vandalizing, if they're threatening other people, of course you would remove these people from the campus. That's what you should do. That's why we have campus police. But the idea that you're for open debate, but then you're saying that anything that you deem as anti-Semitic can't be stated on the campus. So again, I'm not sure how those two things compare to one another. But again, it does bring an interesting point up. But it also says, and uphold a commitment to Title IX, of course, providing safe and fair opportunities for women, of course, including single-sex housing for any women defined on the basis of sex, who request such accommodations, and all female sports, locker rooms, and showering facilities. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said that the deal cements policy changes that will protect people on campus from harassment and discrimination. Again, I'm not denying that they should be following Title IX. Of course they should be, because it's a civil rights violation. But let me ask you this. Why are they fining $75 million to the U.S. Treasury, though? This is what I don't understand. So they're saying that they violated certain students' rights, yet they closed down the investigation in exchange for money, but they're going to go in return give them back $790 million in grant money. Doesn't make any sense to me. So what exactly was happening here? A couple of weeks ago, I read to you, and I remember this because it was at Northwestern, they were making a anti-Semitic course that students had to enroll in order to get their diploma. And some 300, I think it was roughly 300 students or so, declined. They said, listen, I'm not going to take this class. It has nothing to do with my program. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing. Why the hell am I sitting in this class and wasting my time in this class? And again, it begs the question, what are they teaching them in this anti-Semitic course? Nobody knows. But here we go, that the fine agreed to by Northwestern is the second largest behind Columbia's, which agreed in July to pay the government $200 million to resolve a series of investigations and restore its funding. So again, if someone's rights are being discriminated against, if people are being attacked, you're just going to resolve the investigation for money? Brown and Cartel also reached agreements with the government to restore funding following anti-Semitic investigations. So again, what are you investigating that you deem is anti-Semitic? Are students being told to get the hell off the campus? Are they saying, anyone we see that's Jewish or, wearing a yarmulke? What are you talking about here? Because if it's just free speech, how can you sit there and say that it's just simply anti-Semitic? First of all, Palestinians are also Semitic peoples, just so we're all clear on this. Just to be very clear with you on this. So how can it be anti-Semitic? That's number one. If they want to say it's anti-Jewish hatred, well, okay, that's fine. But then you'd have to show us the examples of the university president allowing this to continue on, and of course being told that this type of behavior is okay to engage in. Again, which it's not, and it shouldn't happen. But we need examples of this. Even in Harvard, the administration's primary target remains in negotiations with the federal government now over its demands for changes to campus policies and governance. The Ivy League schools sued over the administration's cuts to its grant money and now won in a court victory in September when a federal judge ordered the government to restore federal funding, saying the Trump administration used anti-Semitism as a smokescreen. So again, I'm open to this debate. But again, show us the examples. Now, I looked up a couple of instances. I was only able to find two. And again, I'm not saying there's verbal harassment going on in these campuses. I'm sure there is. I also know that most of these people in these protests are probably not students on the campus as well. Again, how do you go to Harvard and spend all your day protesting? I would think that the academic rigor is very great on the Harvard University campus. Just thought I'd bring that up to you. But I only found two actual instances. One was people spitting. It was in Columbia. People actually spitting on other people. On one other instance, somebody was attacked with a bottle. And it wasn't at Northwestern or Harvard. I forget what university. It may have been the University of Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. Excuse me if I'm mistaken on that one. I just can't remember the instance of where the university was that this took place. And again, that type of behavior doesn't belong on any college campus, by the way. That's not right at all. But what I don't understand, though, is this suing the schools for money, suggesting that there's I guess the university itself is promoting anti-Semitism. Going through an investigation and saying, okay, we'll stop the investigation if you give us money. Well, wait a minute. If someone's rights are being violated, you should actively go out there and try to figure out what the hell's going on here. Is the university allowing this? Are the campus police allowing this? Why are some students allowed to freely walk across campus and others are not? It's a valid question. And if they are, then how is giving them money going to stop all this? That's the problem. I doubt it would. But I mean, even when it was in the height of all this, I was looking at the UCLA campus. You see graffiti, you see trash all over the campus. Why is this being allowed to happen? Again, free speech is one thing. Vandalism, property damage, leaving trash all over the campus, creating civil unrest on the campus is something totally different. That's illegal. Of course, threatening people with violence, absolutely the same thing, and that should be called out. But again, if these cases are very prevalent, as what they're indicating here, then why are we simply blowing it off with a money payment? The people who are engaged in that type of behavior should be charged, and if they're students at the university, they should be expelled. They're violating campus procedure, the terms of agreement. So how can we allow this so easily to say, well, if you just give me money, we'll call it even? I'm sorry, it's awful. Simply awful. But, Paul Craig Roberts, folks, I value everything that he does. He speaks very freely, and again, I want to read this to you. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to do it, so maybe I'll save this one for tomorrow, because it relates very much aligned to what this article was saying. So I don't think I'm enough time to go through this. I have a lot to say on this, too, and comment on it, but I'm going to go over this one tomorrow. I'm going to save this one for tomorrow, but it talks about the University of Minnesota, how it advocates for the termination of the white race. Now, again, we're going to say that it's wrong to use anti-Semitic language or behavior or whatever their accusations they're throwing out here. Then why is it okay, though, if you discriminate against whites at another university campus? Why isn't the University of Minnesota paying money? Why aren't they under investigation? Why hasn't their president been called to resign? Which again, we saw 3 different Ivy League presidents and or chancellors resigning from their position. Why aren't they testifying in front of Congress? That's my question to you. So I'm going to go over this one with you tomorrow, first thing. I only have about 2 minutes remaining in the program, so I'll try to go over something else right now, and then we'll go into that one first thing tomorrow. We'll kind of relate it to the article I just read to you. All right, CNBC, See Nobody Cares. I love that broadcast channel. Oh, yeah, of course. It says here, MIT study finds AI can already replace 11.7% of the workforce. Can you believe this? I told you about this before. You need to be in a field where your job's not going to be replaced, folks, because this is becoming a truism very, very quickly. It says here, MIT on Wednesday of last week released a study that found that artificial intelligence can already, as in right now, replace 11.7% of the U.S. labor market, or such as $1.2 trillion in wages across finance, healthcare, and professional services. Now, the study was conducted using a labor simulation tool called the Iceberg Index, which was created by MIT and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And what did they find? Well, the index stimulates how 151 million U.S. workers interact across the country and how they are affected by AI and its corresponding policy. So, what did they find? Well, the Iceberg Index offers a forwarding look at how AI may reshape the labor market, not just in coastal tech hubs, but across every single state. For lawmakers preparing billion-dollar reskilling and training investments, the index offers a detailed map of where disruption is forming down to the exact zip code. And again, basically they're they're creating a digital twin for the U.S. labor market. This is what the director of this program said. And again, it runs through population-level experiments revealing how AI reshapes tasks and skills and labor flows long before those changes show up in the real economy. So, it maps, what did it say here? Maps more than 32,000 skills across 923 occupations in 3,000 counties, folks. Yep. Coming to a town near you. And this is serious stuff, of course, because that's a hell of a chunk of the labor market to simply just be wiped out in a matter of, what? The blink of an eye? Can you imagine that? You just left college, you're all this student loan debt, then all of a sudden you're told, hey, you know what? We don't need you anymore. Thank you. Thank you for applying, though. We appreciate you. We'll keep you in mind, if we ever need somebody. Yeah. This is becoming a big thing, folks. And again, there's going to be a big bust following this, the AI boom. What'll happen there, folks? Only time will tell. Folks, thanks again for being here. As always, I appreciate you so much. Please share the show with some friends. I hope you'll send out this information. And as always, I hope I'll see you tomorrow on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.